Welcome back, everyone. In the last part of our interview, we explored Roger Buck's early years, his childhood, how he grew up, and the experiences that shaped him. Now we continue the journey into something that lit a fire in him from a very young age: flying. From the age of 9, he dreamed of taking to the skies. He studied hard, worked tirelessly, and chased that dream all the way into the Royal Australian Air Force. As an engineer, he served in Vietnam, and even after returning, his love for flying never stopped. From crop dusting and firebombing to flying missions around the world, his career is nothing short of incredible. He even spent 16 years based in Burke, doing what he loved most. So, let's dive into this next chapter. His passion for flight, the skies he conquered, and the stories that only a lifetime of it.
In Traralgon, I met this bloke, and he was just finishing building his Thorpe T-18, coincidentally enough, and he flew it to England and then back again, around the world in this little Thorpe T-18. Wow. And
when you strapped to jerry cans.
Well, actually, that leads to another little story. The Thorpe T-18 that we flew, Warwick and myself, back from Cairns, it had the wing fuel tanks and a ferry fuel tank up the front of the cockpit. Not the ideal place for a fuel tank, but I'll go into that later. Anyway, I flight planned short legs because I didn't want to rely on the performance of a bloke who was wanting to sell his aeroplane. You get me drift?
Yeah.
And I wasn't keen on relying on a ferry tank because they can be inherently a problem. So just as well, because we landed, I think it was Hewlenden in the first place, and we found that the ferry tank fuel pump wasn't working. So if I'd have relied on that, we would have run out of fuel.
Yeah.
Anyway, the switch was dodgy, so we rewired it to a vacant switch. The manifold pressure was playing up, so we fixed that, and then we continued on. We spent overnight in out in Longreach, I think it was, and then next day down to Burke, and I taught him to fly after that.
That sounds like when you come back down through where the Iver come back down.
Yes, yes, you're right. The Iver, yes.
Come back down through there.
Gee whiz, that's another story.
Yeah, that it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, when you first took off and shitting bricks, as they say, and you take off. So, what's harder, taking off or landing, without crosswinds or anything like that?
That's a big question. I'll just.
Because only a few words, you know.
If it's just a normal aircraft, taking off, not a problem. When I say normal, nose wheel, it's loaded correctly, you've got enough runway in front of you.
Well, how far is enough runway? I suppose it depends on the aircraft.
Exactly, and you're loading, and you have takeoff and landing graphs where you work out what you're going to need with all up weights and all the rest of it. So that's okay. But if you're taking off with a tailwheel aircraft, directional stability is instantly required. And for an ag pilot who spends most of his time flying tailwheels, it's automatic.
Yeah.
But a non-tailwheel pilot will have dramas, and he may well lose the directional control. The other thing is, if you get the tail up too soon, you get a gyroscopic effect on the propeller disc. So if you lift the tail up too soon, there'll be a gyroscopic effect
from the motor throwing
from the propeller disc.
Yeah.
If you've got a disc spinning and you apply a loading to the side, it'll pull you off if it's too severe.
Sounds like a shaft drive on a motorbike. You know, when it spins a certain way, it'll lift or drop you. Depends on the acceleration.
Yeah. So anyway, taking off. I've done I've done about 18,000 hours of ag flying, so I'm starting to get the hang of it. But taking off downhill is okay, provided you can outclimb maybe a hill in front of you, or there's trees in front of you, or a power line. If you've got a power line, you get it flying, but don't pull the nose up too quickly as you can stall. But you've got to get it flying, especially if the grass is a bit long or wet. It'll retard the acceleration. So you've got to lift the aircraft out of the grass a bit, don't stall it, lower the nose ever so slightly so it can gain safety airspeed, and maybe go under a power line or around a hill.
What sort of speed are you doing on liftoff? Is that about 40 k's?
Well, fully laden aircraft, 80 knots, which is 110, 115 mile an hour.
Okay.
So the steeper the hill, the better, because of the rate of acceleration. However, and I've worked on an airstrip, and I measured, out of curiosity, I measured the elevation difference between the start threshold and the end, and it was a 500-foot elevation difference. So coming back into land, you've got to land with a very high nose attitude compared to normal, so you don't run into the hill, and hold it off with a fair bit of power and touch down about halfway up the hill and keep the power on, because if you pull the power off, you will not get up to the top of the hill. You have to spin around, try and take off and go back up again. Yeah. But anyway, that's only half the situation. I said taking off in daylight. If you're taking off at night, a different kettle of fish. You've still got the directional control, which becomes quite automatic. Don't lift the tail too soon, you'll get gyroscopic effect. And taking off at night, you lift off and you don't have a horizon. The very fine hairs in the ears, because of the acceleration, they go back, and that gives the pilot the sensation that he's actually climbing, but he's probably not. So if he succumbs to that sensation, he'll lower the nose, and the scene is set for a prang. He's going to fly into the ground.
So back in Mount Gambier, there's a pilot that took off from there, and they were going. He took off. He wasn't completely trained up, I don't think, and he pranged in the pines across the other side of the Mount Gambier airstrip. He come to grief, hit the tops of the pines and come in. So what you're talking about there could have been his problem there as well. He came up, he had a false sense of...
Yes, exactly. You've got to get on instruments as soon as you lift off. Get on instruments, positive rate of climb, and fly your instruments. Your artificial horizon is one of the main instruments, and the other instruments are peripheral, artificial horizon, because that's all you got. You haven't got a horizon out here unless you're lucky with stars or town lights or something. So there's been a lot of prangs where aircraft have flown back into the ground. So that's what happens.
So takeoff and landing, they're both equal.
Yes, they've each got their particular situations. Yeah.
So, okay, so you decided to become a professional pilot. Where did the professional part? Because that's getting paid to do some things. So did you ever own your own aircraft? And what sort of aircraft?
Yeah. Well, first things first. I obtained my commercial pilot's licence from Latrobe Valley Aero Club. Actually, I remember graduation evening, they had a presentation, and Sir Donald Anderson was the then chairman of Department of Civil Aviation. He presented me with a trophy for the best commercial pilot or something. So that was a bit of a buzz. So I had my commercial pilot's licence, and then still living in Sale, and a mate of mine said he was going up to Bairnsdale to have a yarn to an ag pilot up there, Ben Buckley, and he said, "Do you want to come up?" I said, "Yeah, I wouldn't mind." So I went up there to Bairnsdale with him, about an hour's drive. Anyway, we went out and had a yarn with him, and had a good yarn. So anyway, I arrived back in Sale and full of excitement, and I said to Lynn, I said, "Have a guess what I want to do? I want to go ag flying." And like a trooper, she didn't step in my way, and some wives probably would, but no, she encouraged me all the way. So from then on, I knew I was going to go ag flying, and so tongue in cheek, I rang Ben up the next night. I said, "Oh, Ben, any chance of a flying job?" He said, "Yes, Roger." He said, "As a matter of fact, there is. And how would you like to be based in Sale?" I said, "Oh, wow." One problem, I did not have an agricultural rating, which is a special training program to become an ag pilot. You just can't go and do it. So anyway, long story short, I drove up to Cudell, near Orange, to Hazelden's base, and did my agricultural flying there. I was nervous as a cat on a hot tin roof, and I didn't eat much. I had a tomato sauce sandwich each night for tea, and nothing during the day. But it was a 3-week, very intensive flying course, and I was taught to do stuff that previous instructors said because it's a very unforgiving profession. If you bugger up, it's probably the last one you'll do. So anyway, so I the course is fairly involved, but anyway, so I came back down to Sale and started ag flying for Ben.
Right. And have you ever owned your own plane?
Yes. I owned 2 aircraft out in Burke a few years later. First one was a Cherokee 6. It's a 7-seater, 300 horsepower low-caving fixed variable pitch propeller, and I used that for my private flying, but also I did charter work for the company that I was flying for, and then I sold it. And later on, and I bought a Cessna 182, beautiful little aeroplane, 5-seater, and I had it in the IFR category, instrument flight rules. So I did a fair bit of instrument flying, and that's another story. But I went to Sydney to do my instrument rating, which means you can fly in cloud and all that sort of jazz. And because I was doing a fair bit of charter work for Clyde Ag, the company that I was doing the spraying for out in Burke. But anyway, that's a big story. So yes, the Cherokee 6 and the Cessna 182.
Right. 2 things come to mind there. First off is you're flying different people around Australia. You had any important people? Maybe not so important, but some stories?
Yeah, well, one comes to mind immediately. Nancy Bird Walton, a well-known female pilot back in the days, in 30s and 40s, 50s. She was taught by Sir Charles Kingsford Smith.
Sir Charles Kingsford Smith.
Yeah.
You got that name right?
I have.
Go on, story thing.
There's another story to that. Anyway, I won't get sidetracked. But I flew Nancy from Burke down to Dubbo, and she was so interesting to talk to. We didn't stop talking all the way down. And one thing that stuck in my mind, she said, Roger, she said, we never had aviation maps back in my day. We had Caltex road maps.
Oh, God, can you imagine flying along the line?
Oh, which road shall I take?
Oh, no, you're taking the back road.
Yeah, take the back road. So anyway, we're getting on, and she was to join the flight to Sydney from Dubbo, and we're running about 5 minutes late. And I said, look, I'll call up Dubbo and let them know that we're going to be 5 minutes late. And she said, yeah, okay, but she said they'll wait for me. And they did. And so we landed, and I escorted Nancy to the steps of the Saab passenger aircraft, and such a lovely lady. As a matter of fact, I received a thank you letter from her a couple of weeks later, which was lovely. But sometime later, we heard that Nancy had passed away because she's an elderly lady. So Lynn and I decided to go to her funeral in Sydney, and it was in the Presbyterian Cathedral in George Street. So anyway, we go up the steps to go into the cathedral, and there's a lady there, like an usherette, and she said, now, what's your name and what's your position? I said, well, I'm Roger Buck, and I was a pilot of Nancy Bird Walton. Oh, this way, sir, down to the front. So we sat in the front, and just sitting across there was Malcolm Turnbull and Tony Abbott and Dick Smith. G'day, fellas. Not really. So
they acknowledge your presence?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But that was, that was a notable passenger.
Yeah.
Such a lovely lady.
So you said you had some dignitaries, had your own planes, and you're doing crop dusting. Now, Firebombing. That's no mud's game. That's a cowboy of the sky. Now, as a non-pilot type of person, pilot, and they give you're up there buzzing around in the sky with that whole heap of other planes, and they give you some coordinates to
Yep.
to go bomb and whereabouts it's got to be.
Yep.
You've got all that through your mind. You've got planes on your mind.
Yeah.
You've got a belly full of
Yep.
retardant or
The
water.
aeroplane doesn't want to fly.
No, it wouldn't do. No, and you're coming in the smoke.
Smoke.
So what part? When do you say, okay, I want to go home to mum?
Well, there's a few things there. Firstly, not everyone can be a firebombing pilot.
No, okay.
They have to be approved. So once you go through that, that's okay. So basically, you're carrying a belly full of water and foam. There's a small container of liquid foam in the hopper that mixes with the water on your way up to the fire from the airstrip. And when you let the load go, it goes into a foam, and that smothers the fire. I mean, with the foam. Or you've got Phos-Chek in the hopper, which is it's a powder dissolved in water, and everything that it sticks onto, like leaves and trees and stuff, makes it non-flammable. So firebombing, the basic principle is they'll go out and map the fire, generally in a fixed wing aircraft, and they'll work out where's the best part to attack this fire. And so then a helicopter will go out and they will talk to each other, and so the helicopter knows what the fire chief wants. So the idea is you're flying toward, you get the coordinates, because there might be other areas that you might have to go to. But anyway, you're flying out and you give a 10-mile inbound call to the chopper pilot so he knows that I'm coming.
So you got a pilot up there hovering, waiting for you to come in.
Yeah, he's sort of sitting there.
Yeah.
And he knows where he wants the load to go.
Yep.
So you've got to get a visual fix on him. So you're a few k's out, and then I'll call him visual. So then I'll fly around to here, because I've got to come in on his nose to tail in that line, because that's where he wants the load. And when he judges I'm about the right spot, I'll call him hover off. So he'll hover out of my way, and I'll continue that same line, and then he'll count 3, 2, 1, bomb. So I let it go.
And what speed are you doing that?
100 knots.
Which is?
120 mile an hour.
So
we work in knots, but just to explain what I'm getting at, because you've got over 2 tonne of water and you let it go suddenly.
You're going to...
Yeah, well, this is what you do.
Yeah.
And that's what happened to that bloke in Mount Gambier. Anyway, that's another story. So you've got to be right on 100 knots. Anything faster, the faster you are above that, the more tendency for you to go onto your back.
Yep.
Unrecoverable. Anything slower, say you're 90 or 95 knots, you're very close to the stall, and because of the high density altitude, the air's thinner, the heat and all the rest of it, turbulence, you can easily stall. So 100 knots is the golden rule, and so away you go. And then you got other aircraft coming in behind you. We had a big fire to put out in the Wallamai National Park, near Lithgow in the Blue Mountains.
Yeah.
Some time back, they discovered this
That's right.
stand of pines.
That pine thing, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Exactly. And it was the Wallamai pine, and they thought it was extinct millions of years ago. But they found this stand of, I don't know how many trees, not many, in this little corner of this bloody river canyon. And it must have been the ideal spot for those pines. They spotted these trees and thought, wow. But the problem was the fire was burning along, and it was in danger of going into the river canyon and burning the trees. There was also a rare rock wallaby family there.
Yeah.
So anyway, we were going flat out from dawn till dark, and at night time, you get taken back to your motel room, and the bed was very welcoming, and so you get going the next day. The trouble being, by the time you got back up there, the fire's gotten going again, and the river canyon is full of blue smoke. But you've got to get down into that, find the chopper, get into position, and bomb exactly where you want it.
You said find the chopper.
Yeah, in amongst the blue smoke. The canyon's not all that.
Cowboys is right.
Eh?
Cowboys are right.
One of our pilots said, "I'm not going." We called it the hell hole. He said, "I'm not going down in there." I said,
Do I know that part?
You do.
Hey.
And moving on, I said, "Well, that's your choice." However, keep in mind that they grade you on your work. If you don't do the proper job, you won't get invited back to the next fire.
Okay.
So the pressure's on. It's a fine line.
Yeah.
So I would let down into the canyon gradually, because if you stick the nose down too quickly, the prop tends to drive the gas turbine engine, which is very detrimental, and it's not how it's supposed to work. So you've got to let down where the propeller is loaded all the time.
Not that normal.
Yeah, down there, into there, find the chopper and get in position. And he said to me one drop, he said, go around. He said, I missed it. He said, come around again. I said, I can't get out of the canyon. He said, let it go. So let the load go and get up again. So we were there for a few days, and the fire...
So that would be pretty hair-raising. You come in there, and he missed it, not your mistake.
No, he missed it.
Yeah, so you got no chance, but
No.
just drop the load.
Yeah, drop the load, because he said he said climb out and come around. I said, I can't get out of here with the load on. So he said, drop it, let it go.
So you dropped it.
Yeah.
But you'll have to do it the same as when you're bombing the
Yeah,
fire itself, wouldn't you?
yeah. The speed is everything.
Yeah.
Control of the speed.
100 knots.
Yeah, and no loose articles, no pens or flight bag or books, nothing. Because when you let that load go, and they just fly everywhere. So we had 5 fixed-wing aircraft on that fire and 5 helicopters. Actually, they got in Elvis, the sky crane, you know, Elvis.
The big one?
Yeah, he did a great job. The problem was the bloke trying to keep the bloody water up to him, because he could put some there and then put some there and put some there, and he had his own fire controller, because you can imagine the situation.
Yeah.
So his loading bloke back at the airstrip was an ag strip on the side of a hill just out of Lithgow, and so he was flat out keeping the water up to him. He had a big semi-trailer tanker for the water, and we had a tanker, and they would drive into Sydney each night to refuel, because they were a fuel tanker as well. So we were there for a few days, and I'm just thinking of another fire down Maria way. We're getting pretty weary, because you go from dawn till dark, and it's a bit of a high stress job. And anyway,
I'm stressed out. Just listen to it.
So the alarm goes at, I don't know, 5:30 or something in a motel room. Oh, bugger. Gotta get, hang on, it's rain on the roof. It's raining. Good. I don't have to get up. But just then the phone goes. You firebombing pilots out to the airstrip. It's raining. Yes, but get out there anyway. Righto. So we go out there, and it's raining. And we're a bit mystified with this, but anyway, they wanted to put Foscheck, it was, on the fire. So we take off, and the same thing, the blue smoke just hangs around. Yeah. And I found the best way, and the visibility is not all that good anyway, but the best of a bad lot is just above the trees where the smoke's starting to lift, and it hangs around there. But this here is not so bad. So, you're 20 feet over the top of the trees. But mind you, you're in the Great Divide, so you've got to watch out for hills in the front. And so, anyway, I'll find the chopper and come around, and he goes 3, 2, 1 bomb. So I'll let it go. Oh, I had the wipers on because it's raining. And anyway, I was over the fire when I realised things are dry as a bone. I didn't need the wipers. I was a bit too busy to switch them off and let them go. Over the fire, dry as a bone, let the load go, out the other side, back into the rain again. So a very steep climbing turn to the right. We're on instruments now. This is where the IFR, no slouches. Maximum rate of climb, because you've got aircraft coming behind you. So you've got to be mindful of keeping separated. So, and then you climb up, and so you know your lower safe altitude because you're in the Blue Mountains, as I said. And then you turn east, which is towards the coast, and out that way, and when it finally clears, down into Maria and get another load. So we're doing that all day.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah. When I was driving trucks, Roger, we had a logbook. We only allowed to drive so many hours and have a break and so many breaks all that time in a 24-hour period.
Yeah.
I can't see airplanes, crop dusters, bloody jockeys of the sky doing anything different. Oh, you have a logbook?
Yeah, we had logbooks, and they were scrutinised from now and again. Not often, good. But yeah, so we were limited to 10 hours of flying per 24 hours, and so many hours a week, so many hours a month. So I would organise my flying as best I could to stay legal. And out in Burke, I was flying 10 hours each night.
Just on that, you'd be doing what sort of crops out there?
Cotton crops.
Cotton crops, yeah.
Yeah. So I'd go to the office in the afternoon about 4 p.m. after the agronomist would come in from having a look at the different cotton crops. And so I'd meet up with them and we'd discuss the night's spraying. And so they'd give me spray orders. And so then I'd organise my blokes and we'd be out at the first strip by about 6 o'clock, 6:30. And so I'd brief my markers, they'd go down, and then I'd give my loading sheets to my chemical mixing loader driver, and he would mix the first load and pump it in. I'd be busy adjusting the microneers and getting everything ready. So then I'd be taking off probably about 7 o'clock at night, and the sun's down or nearly down. The heat of the day is just about gone, and so I'd be out, depending on the load size, 2 hours in the thrush, radial thrush, or 3 hours in the drometer, and I had about 3 hours 20 minutes endurance in the drometer, so you'd have to keep a bit of an eye on your load size that you didn't start getting too low on fuel. And then I'd be back in after 3 hours with a drommy and for another load of chemical, fill up with fuel, clean the windscreen, because each load you'd come back with bugs, moths, bit of chemical, bit of oil on the windscreen, and a bit hard to see through. So the golden rules would clean the windscreen each time, and then off we go again. So I'd spray all night like that until about 10 o'clock the next morning. After that, it was getting a bit too hot. Anything above 32 degrees Celsius, the chemical started to lose its effectiveness, and so we'd pull up. Now, if I hadn't finished the night's work, it would be added on to the next night's work. And then we'd wash everything down, wash the vehicles, the aeroplane, everything else, unload chemical, fuel, fix anything that needed fixing.
So you're meant to be the pilot, not the fixer.
Yeah, I was a bit of a and just to continue on with that, my workers, I would do the timesheets once a fortnight and send them down to those ones by then, and so it went on. But anyway, the story goes on.
Yeah, so it sounds like your ground crew, flagman, or the filler, which is a little bit experienced with that.
Yeah.
They're fairly important, and you sound like you rely on them.
Yes, yeah. It's not a difficult job for them, but it's important they do it correct the first time.
Yeah.
If they make a mistake again, I'll give them one warning. If they make a mistake again, that's it.
That's it.
Finished. Because everything's got to be done right.
Yeah.
It's a high stress job, and you can't afford any muck ups. So that's the way it was.
Yeah.
I only had to sack 2 blokes. And the terms of employment were turn up on time, turn up sober, do a good job, and you'll get paid well.
Yeah.
And the 2 blokes one bloke turned up drunk, and I said, mate, you know what it means? He said, yeah. I said, because there's a turning propeller, there's fuel being pumped, there's chemical being pumped, and everything else. And if he stuck his head through the propeller, that's it. So, and the other bloke I had to put off because he went walkabout. But, so that's the basic.
So, all parts of you've done, you've got your pilot's licence, you've done flying different people around Australia, you've done firebombing in Australia. Have you ever flown overseas?
Yes, yeah. I was fortunate enough to be offered a job in England. I had to arrive and do an exam, air legislation exam, before I could go flying. So I shut myself in my room for 1 week, studied from dawn till dark. I'd come out for meals, and I had to pass this exam, otherwise I couldn't go flying. So the pressure was on. So anyway, on the appointed day, I caught the train into London, found the office, and sat the exam a couple of hours, come out, and he said, you've passed. Oh, thank God for that. So then Lynn came with me. So then we went over to a little town called Uffington near the Welsh border. And I operated out of a paddock airstrip behind the farmhouse there. I operated a Pawnee, a 260 horsepower Pawnee, a little bit bigger than the one I'd been flying in Australia. And then Bill Walker, my boss, he came over and he flew the Pawnee and he gave me the Ag Wagon. He wasn't as familiar with the Ag Wagon as he wanted to be, so I flew it. And I flew top dressing for 3 months. We had a couple of weeks off before the spraying started, so the boss said we could jump on a tour somewhere. So we joined a bus tour through Europe for 2 weeks. We had a look through. So then come back and sprayed for 3 months. Yeah.
Okay.
But over there, they're very good farmers, very efficient. No, I take my hat off to them. Lynn was marking with my chemical mixer's wife well before GPS, and as a matter of fact, I was doing a two-load job, and I was coming back with the second load, and my marker gave me a radio call. Oh, Roger, you better hang back a bit. The Queen's driving through. I said, oh yeah, pull the other one. Anyway, I got closer to the paddock, and there was a motorcade of black cars slowly moving along, and I thought, yeah, I better hang back because if it is QE2, well, I could end up in the deepest dungeon. But yeah, so that was that.
So, through your flying career, through here in Australia and over there, obviously, is there any special ones that come to mind? Anything more memorable than others? Even in your
in Australia, or
either either.
Well, I've had a few engine failures. If
I'm going to get to that next.
Rightio.
Most exciting place you've flown, I suppose.
Most exciting, I guess England is, because it's all fairly new. Yeah, it was quite good.
So, 18,000 hours of flying.
That's ag flying.
Of ag flying itself.
Mainly ag flying. I've done charter, but 98% of that is ag work.
Now, I've did a little bit of reading research on ag pilots. They only do so many hours before there's a mishap. There's a bit of a rule of thumb type thing. So, in my terminology, you ever pranged a bloody plane?
Oh, I haven't pranged a bloody plane. No, it was a Transaver air truck, Australian designed and built, very short coupled, which means it's easily out of balance. The thrust versus the drag, lift versus weight. The coupling that they form is very easily put out of balance. However, I picked this aircraft up and flew it to Sale and then back to Bairnsdale. So I had a grand total of 1 hour on the air truck. And anyway, the boss was loading me and I was unaware that he had overloaded me. So I took off and did a couple of runs.
Well, I haven't heard of too many agricultural pilots, crop dusters, praying their planes, and survive. What does happen to Roger? Does he ditch the plane? How badly is he hurt? How long does it take for him to get back into the plane? Does this accident affect his bagpiping career, which he loves so muchly? Off-camera, Roger talks about playing the bagpipes all over the world, even at the Edinburgh Military Tattoo in front of the Queen, which would be a buzz for anybody. So until next week, please like and subscribe to Dirty Socks Greg Buck, and we will see together what happens to Roger.